Latin American happiness, or happiness in Latin American countries. And we have three presentations, one for Mexico, the other for Colombia, and the other one for Brazil. No? Mm-hmm. Basically, the three largest countries in Latin America, 250 million, no, in Brazil, 130 and 30 and 50 in Colombia. So this is a good representation of Latin Americans, no? And we start today with Roberto, no? He's going to talk about, we have it here, Roberto is the last author, living with others, no? This is family and household size and how it relates to subjective well-being. So let's start, no? We have about 20 minutes, more or less, three presentations, and a little bit more or less, but so we have time to interact. That's very important.
So what I'm going to present is something that has already been published. These are the main results published in the World Happiness Report last year, which was titled Living Together, or Living with Others, I believe that was the title. So basically, the results of this work is a work that was done by a group of colleagues from Mexico. The study is mainly in Mexico. It has some comparisons between Mexico and Europe, Latin America, but especially Mexico, and then with what's going on in Mexico, in Europe, sorry. And this is a work that my colleagues Lina Martinez, Mariano Rojas, Margarita Tarragona from Mexico, and Gerardo Leiva Parra, also from Mexico. We are the co-authors of this work, of this analysis that was, as I said, published in the World Happiness Report last year. So the main question or idea behind this study was whether there is any kind of relationship between well-being, life satisfaction, and household size and family configurations. Whether there wasn't any relationship, and if that was the case, how we can characterize that relationship. These are my colleagues and co-authors of the study. So let's start with what is the size, the average size of households in a selection of countries. This is Latin America and Europe. As you can see from this chart, the countries that have the largest average of members of the household are in Latin America. The highest one is Nicaragua, with an average size of 5 members in the household. And then the smallest average size of household is in Puerto Rico, with almost 3 members. But then in the bottom of the chart, what you see is the average size of households in Europe, which are as low as less than 2 members, around 2 members in Denmark, which, of course, this chart what shows is that there is an important difference in terms of the size of household in these two regions. This is another interesting of looking at the same field, at same or slightly similar statistic, which is those households composed by only 1 person. As you can see, again, in Europe, mostly there's a very large proportion of households in Europe. Again, Denmark appears as one of the main cases where there's a large proportion of households composed only by 1 person. In Denmark, that proportion is close to 40%, whereas in Latin American countries, it is actually very rare to find that kind of household. As low as 4% in Nicaragua, or even the highest one is Uruguay with almost 17%. So moving a little bit now into the case of Mexico, we very much emphasize our analysis or focused our analysis into Mexico because we had very good data. As you probably are aware of, Mexico has developed a very large data set and statistical endowment, or a lot of work from the National Statistical Office from 2012 up to now, with a lot of statistical work there. One of the members of our team, Gerardo Lopez Leiva, is actually one of the pioneers in this area within the National Statistical Office. So that's why, having all this information, we decided to focus our attention on Mexico and make some comparisons with Europe. So what you can see here is a comparison between these two, Mexico and Europe, regarding the number of members of the household. We have, in the case of Mexico, the blue bars, and Europe, the pink bars. So what you can see here is that the number of members in the household in Mexico is between 4, around 4 is between 3 and 4 is like the average. So this is the distribution you would find. And in Europe, you have smaller households, closer to between 1 and 2, right? So this is, once again, you find an important difference here. Again, if you plot a line, in this case, between the well-being of the members of the household and the size of the household, you would find that around 4, in the case of Mexico, the highest level of well-being, you will find it in the households of 4 members. And in the case of Europe, you will find it in having 5 members, right? But there are so few households of 5 members that it actually doesn't show in the results in terms of well-being. So another of the findings that we get is that in Latin America, the largest households actually increase their emotional satisfaction. They have higher emotional satisfaction, although having larger households, that can also affect economic satisfaction. So in this side of the slide, what you see is how, depending on the size of the household, the well-being increases to a certain point, to around a household size of 5, and then it tends to decrease when the number of members of the households increases as well. And one of the potential explanations is that those households that are larger, they're probably that way because they probably they get an advantage of members of the household having several activities and sources of income. And what you can see here as well is that as the number of members of the households increases, also decreases the satisfaction with their economic situation, which is, one of the evidences that we find to support this idea, this finding. It's not only important the satisfaction with the household or with the economic situation, but also with the family relationships. As you know, one of the domains of life is precisely what is the satisfaction that people have with the kind of relationships they have within the family, and it's probably one of the highest levels of satisfaction that we find among the several life domains that we included in the analysis. It goes as high as 9 points in the scale from 0 to 10. It's very flat, so it seems that it doesn't probably, well, it's less than 1 point difference between the lowest and the highest level of satisfaction. But it actually it's very important. The level of satisfaction with family relationships is particularly high in Mexico. This is another comparison that we have between Mexico and Europe. In this case, we are contrasting here, comparing the family configurations and the level of satisfaction or life satisfaction and happiness within those particular family configurations. So if we look at this first chart, what we can see is that we have 6 different types of family configurations. The first one, which has the largest percentage of types of families or family configurations in Mexico, is almost 40%. That is a couple with at least one child. The second one is couple with at least one child and other members of the family, what we would call an extended family. Couples without children is the third column. Single parent household with other members of the family. Households with only one person, and finally single parents. Okay, that's the last one. And the several configurations are arranged in a way they show how happiness is declining, goes from the highest to the lowest, right? So the highest level of life satisfaction that we observe is in those family configurations where we find a couple with at least one child. And the lowest one are those households that have single parents, single mother, single parent, right? This is what we observe in the case of Mexico. If we move to the case of Europe, we see a different picture. We arrange in the same order the several family configurations. So the largest proportion is of those couples without children. That's the largest proportion in Europe, followed by couples with at least one child. But the largest or the highest level of well-being, we observe that in the case of couples with one child. In that case, it's very similar to the case of Mexico, right? But the composition in terms of the types of family configurations are different. This is another finding that we get from the analysis, which is a contrast, a comparison between Mexico and Europe. One of the main conclusions of this chart that we get from this is that living alone is much more frequent in Europe than in Mexico. But that gives less happiness or less life satisfaction than in Mexico, right? So despite that, the pattern is that it is a higher percentage of this type of configuration. It's not that it really gives happiness to the people. It has to do with another kind of elements or factors that are at play. So we have here the reference type of configuration. The configuration that is the reference is couples with at least one child, which is, as we saw in the previous slide, the type of configuration that has the highest level of well-being. And then we see how the rest of the several configurations decrease the level of happiness, but not in the same way in Mexico as in Europe, right? Another thing that we can find here is that how being in a single parent household is actually the one type of household that has, in both contexts, the largest effect or association with low well-being. So what are some of the sort of the conclusions or the main implications that we got from this analysis? One of them is that families that have around 4 members in the household, they are the ones who report the largest levels of happiness or life satisfaction, because in a way we consider they benefit from probably closer links, social links, or social bonds with the family members. Households, families are, as we discussed in the group, are not only the people with which we live, but also the people with which we enjoy life. We share not only the hardships or the troubles of life, but also the things that we enjoy the most. So family becomes a place of enjoyment as well as resilience. Of course, family as well, in a context such as Mexico, gives a lot of support. sometimes because that support is not found in places like the state or the market. So family becomes a very important social support, social network kind of place, of space. And probably one of the final implications that I would mention, and of course I would invite Lina and of course Mariano, if they want to stress or emphasize anything else about this report as co-authors of this study, is that, of course, all those policies that emphasize growth or are interested in expanding the economic opportunities of the countries have to take into account how those policies impact the family and how those policies impact even differently, in a different way, depending of the family configuration. And of course, that would have implications in terms of the well-being of those families and those specific configurations. So it's important to consider this more sort of relational well-being that cuts through what's going on within the families. And I think those are the main findings, the main ideas that we identify in the study. We have a sort of a follow-up study of this, but looking more into the sex differences. I'm not going to talk about that because that's a matter of another presentation and place. Probably when we have the study already published, it has been already approved. It's part of a book that is coming into light in a few months. But that's a follow-up of this study. So if anyone is interested, of course, I can let you know when that's going to happen, right? So that's it for myself. Thanks.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yeah, I think we can have time for conversation now. Yeah, let's do
Just very quick,
one by one. I don't know
just for clarification.
But let's do it now. So,
Two quick questions. One, in the case of Mexico, I learned that there is a Secretary of Care or something like that, una Secretaría del Cuidado, that provides services for families from early childhood to elders.
Mm-hmm.
So I wonder if this policy is having an influence in Mexico in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of satisfaction. And I assume that this is all self-perception of quality of life and happiness, no?
Yes, totally,
Yeah.
yes.
So I wonder if there is the impact of these policies. And the second is, besides living, cohabitating in the same house, is different from having a relationship with other members of the family who are not living there. So giving you my example, I live with my wife, we have two kids, one is in California, the other is in New Jersey, in Princeton. So we are in touch 24/7. So we have a group, the four of us, and we are talking all the time, and we keep updated, and we do calls once a day or at least every week. We do 2 or 3 times a week. So we are not cohabitating, but we are in regular relationship. So I wonder if you are looking at these relationships that are not imply living in the same household.
Sure, those very, very good questions. The first one, what we would call the system of care in Mexico is actually very recent, very new.
Claudia, no?
With Claudia Sheinbaum.
Yeah.
It's a new law that tries to sort of give the basis for new policies of care, to emphasize the importance of care. It has, of course, a very strong gender concern or gender focus. And also in the case of Mexico City, and I believe it's another couple of states in Mexico that already have some policies. I think, to my knowledge, there is no research conducted to find out whether those policies have had already some kind of impact on the levels of life satisfaction, well-being, or happiness. I think that's some work that needs to be done. Probably it's somewhat early because those policies, I think they have only about a few years. In the case of Mexico, actually, it was just launched. I think it was last year. The system, what they call the system of care, policies of care. But there are other specific policies or programs that lean towards the idea of care, of caring, but are not actually conceived as such. So that's what I would say. And on your second question, there is no data about whether the household is conceived in terms of only cohabitating. Actually, what the data shows is only those people that are living within a household. It doesn't say nothing about whether the family has a link with someone living in another place.
It could be living 1 block away.
Exactly, or 1 block away, or in the same. Well, if they live in the same sort of building, even if there are different sort of places of different places or spaces where they actually live day to day. The way that household is defined for statistical terms in Mexico is those people with which you normally cook and you normally raise the income to live together. It's I'm not being very precise, but it's something like that. So yeah, the data doesn't include this type of family that you are considering. What would be the impact of having a strong bonds of family, even though they don't live together? That's something that I think, at least in this study, is not addressed. But I think probably there are some. We don't remember we found any study like that in the literature review that we did. But I'm sure that there must be something. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for the presentation. I think that I have 3 questions, but simple questions. The first one, if you could share with us, is which question was used to analyzing life satisfaction? Was the country letter or was it?
It was life satisfaction.
Life satisfaction.
Yeah.
Okay. The second one is if you can talk about a little bit about the sample and the two samples, if they are the same size or the same average, the same features about the samples. And this was the second question. And the third question, if this study that you are sharing with us, they take an account with the cost of living in the places in the, I think so, the urban area that the people answer these instruments. If they take an account that live in a bigger place it's more expensive than the small places with family. If you have some comments about this.
Okay. On the first question, I remember that the Enviare survey from Mexico from 2021 is around 30,000, 35,000 probably. That's the sample size. To be honest, I don't remember the social survey from Europe. I don't know if Mariano or Lina remember.
1,000 per country.
Okay.
More or less.
Around, right? And on the second question, Enviare gives you a sample that allows you to have representation at the state level, and of course, as far as I understand, it gives you representation at the urban and rural level. We didn't do the analysis distinguishing between the two of them, but from this chart, and of course, we did controls in terms of assets, for example. So in that way, we tried to include the potential implications in terms of the cost of living and the differences in socioeconomic difference that could explain some of these findings. But in this case, what we found, and I believe this is what you are probably referring to, is that when the household increases in size, we are also looking at households that employ probably labor strategies in terms of finding out, in terms of getting more, in terms of having more members of the household that need to go out and find some income in order to make a living for the household, right? So was one thing, and the other thing also is that, of course, those households tend to be. It's not that the house increases as the number of members of the household also increases. So what you would find is that very large households, in terms of number of members, they live in very small places. So that also plays a factor in terms of the well-being. We didn't dive into that particular explanation, but I think that's one of the another potential explanations for this situation, right? Okay.
So there is a little bit of change in title and then the matter of the presentation. It's still about São Paulo, but we didn't have that much data about Rio, so it's gonna be about Brazil versus São Paulo. And still, at least 50% of the finding would be similar. São Paulo is unhappy. Okay, so Brazil. Brazil is interesting place. It's a very large country. I just found yesterday or today that it's half of not Latin America, but South America, right? So it's a huge place, and it has some of the largest world cities, right? So São Paulo is the city proper, wouldn't be that big, like 12, 13 million, but the metropolitan area is 21, 23 million. It's a really large place, and there are some other large cities as well. Rio is not that large. It's half of São Paulo, actually. And when you look at São Paulo, it doesn't look happy, right? It's a lot of concrete, glass, asphalt, man-made stuff. It doesn't look happy. And that's what we'll be investigating here, whether São Paulo is happy. And there's also a lot of inequality, and that's a common theme in Latin America or South America, that there's a lot of inequality, and there's a lot of urban inequality too. On the other hand, we would expect, at least in some ways, for cities to be doing well, for cities to be maybe happier. Right, so cities are centers of economic activity. A lot of great things like better education, better jobs, public services. These are urban features. So on those metrics, quality of life seems to be maybe higher in cities, right? But again, high inequality, congestion, pollution, those may point to negative side of urban living. And there's this concept of urban-rural happiness gradient. Actually, I came up with an old paper from 2011, and much of my research is about this urban-rural happiness gradient, where happiness is typically lowest in the largest cities and highest in the rural areas. Right, so here in this paper, we focus on Brazil and try to see if we can find this happiness, this urban-rural happiness gradient in Brazil. There was an earlier study by Rubia Valente in 2016. She looked at continent as a whole, didn't find much. But again, I think there is great value to look at specific countries, specific contexts. We can get better information that way. Right, so that's the motivation here. That's the research question. Do we see the urban-rural happiness gradient in Brazil? Are large cities like São Paulo less happy than rural areas? There were some studies in Brazil specifically, but there were just like 3 of them, and they were for specific groups like older people, about mental health, so there is really not much here in Brazil about urban-rural happiness gradient. We use World Value Survey. There were a couple waves in Brazil, I think like 4 or 5. Depending on the main independent variable, we'll use all of those or just the latest one. The dependent variable is the typical happiness question that everybody's seen. The cognitive one, whether a person is satisfied with life as a whole. And it's from 1 to 10. And this is a great variable that, as far as I know, nobody has used so far. And it's new in wave 7. And we have it for Brazil for 2018. So we have the type of settlement. We have capital cities, so we have São Paulo, we have 700 people there. And then we have regional centers, district centers, smaller cities, towns, and villages. So that would be the main independent variable in this study. We use OLS, and we use typical set of controls. Right, so these are the main findings. We regress life satisfaction on those settlement type dummies. The base case, the omitted category is São Paulo. And we see positive effect already for regional centers. So regional centers are already happier than São Paulo. But the biggest effect is for village. So villages are 0.9, which is a big effect size, 0.9 more satisfied with life than São Paulo. Right, and again, it's at least in some ways counterintuitive, because the economic activity, well-paid jobs, great universities, all of that is concentrated in São Paulo. And yet villages are happier by 0.9 than São Paulo. And the strong effect persists when we control for all the usual happiness predictors and subsequent models. So that's the main finding here. Even like controlling for region dummies, and in this last column, it's 0.8 on village. Right, and then we also do like a regression that has been done a lot with the size of a place dummies. Right, so we have population sizes for various places, less than 2,000 to 5,000, all the way up to 100 to 500,000 and more than 500,000. Right, and these are predicted life satisfaction for different sizes of a place. And we can see that it's highest in the smallest places, and then it goes down, especially at 100,000 and then 500,000. So there's this little bit nonlinear effect. When a place reaches about 100,000 or a few 100,000, then it's less happy. But that's like a little bit of an artifact how we created this variable. So we pulled all the observations from less than 2,000 to 5,000, 5 to 10,000 into one bin. If we didn't do that, the results would be a little bit different, right? So if we use all of those categories, the highest happiness seems to be at 5 to 10,000, although there are very few people in this lowest category, right? So the confidence interval is very wide, and we just don't know about the effect in a statistically significant way here. But yeah, so regional centers happier than São Paulo, and villages even happier. And it's a big effect. It's like 0.9 on 1 to 10 scale. Again, largest places like São Paulo or 500,000 plus is happy. The effect is nonlinear, as found usual in the literature, right? So there's not much difference here, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, but then when it's 100,000, few 100,000, then it drops. Right, and then we like try to think about why villages, smaller towns may be happier. Right, so cities are congested, polluted, there's a lot of inequality. On the other hand, in the smaller places, seems like some of the necessities are available, like healthcare, though some other necessities may not be available, right? So there is more work to be done to think more about what it means and why that might be the case specifically here in Brazil. And then we did a little bit by province. The limitation is that the data are not really representative of provinces. We pulled a couple waves together, but there are some interesting findings. So this is HDI by province in Brazil, Human Development Index. And these are ranks, right? So southeastern Brazil, that's where the development is the greatest. So you can see number 1 is the capital, Brazil. Then São Paulo is here. Number 2, Rio is number 8. Right, so they're all quite developed. And then on the other hand, northwest, that's where the rural areas are, Amazonas, and these are undeveloped, as measured by HDI. But then when we look at happiness, it's a little bit almost like opposite, right? So the Amazonas would be some of the happiest, between 8 to 8.7. And those very developed places like São Paulo is here, these are the least happy. Brazil is also quite unhappy. Right, and again, the data are not really representative of those. I wouldn't make too much out of it, but there seems to be this urban-rural happiness gradient here. We do have better data for Colombia, where we can actually have a big sample for province. So that's, I think, where we can do more work with the regional differences. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Questions?
I have a question. What do you call a village?
Right, so that's this New World Value Survey variable. We have 226 people there. That's how it's coded. The important thing to keep in mind here is that it's coded by the interviewer. So it's supposed to be good quality variable, kind of objective, whereas in Gallup it's actually by respondent. Right, so that's one advantage. It's village, right? Like what I miss here is crosstabs between these and size of a place. Right, so like with size of a place, we can be even more specific. We got less than 2,000, 2 to 5,000, and so on.
Those are villages.
Right, so it's a term used, like if you look at the code book, again, this is the question to the interviewer, so it's supposed to be more objective, right? And the interviewer would check whether the respondent is in capital city, regional center, or village.
So it's not based on the population of the town where the survey is?
Yeah, right, so I don't have these crosstabs here, but like we can relate this variable to these cutoff points, right? So we can see how many people from village would be like in those categories. So we can do that.
Can you look at the variables that you have there, or the variables there? You don't have children there.
No.
So you cannot talk to the previous presentation on this.
Yes, my previous presentation. Yeah, that's probably something we should.
You don't have number of children.
We should add. We have married. Yeah, that will be something to add.
Yeah.
They're interesting because, and even in São Paulo, the state,
Yeah.
have village also.
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to understand the discrepancy. But original, you was talking about, actually you was talking about unhappy São Paulo with
Right.
happy Rio, but you changed the proposal.
Yeah, with Rio, we didn't have that much data. And we also, with the 7th wave of World Value Survey, we can very well measure the capital, right? So we decided to focus more on São Paulo. There is more data. There is the specific question. We tried to do like some work with these provinces, right? So we do have those 26 or so federative states or federative unit states of Brazil. So we have that variable, but the sample size runs smaller, and World Value Survey is not representative of those.
So your title would be Unhappy Sao Paulo, Happy Amazon.
Yeah, right. So it's like Happy Brazil, or could be Happy Amazon and Happy São Paulo.
I'm question because I'm living in São Paulo. Yeah,
Oh.
I'm from Rio de Janeiro, so that was I'm quite interested about the topic. And one thing that's interesting in São Paulo, that you're talking about the people who live in São Paulo. It's very São Paulo. It's a cosmopolitan city. We have a lot of immigrants from another region under Rio de Janeiro, another region from Brazil, to accomplish to grow in professional way. So that's I'm trying to think how São Paulo, it's a place that people have a chance to grow and professional, and even though they are unhappy.
Right. So I think for that reason, these findings are really interesting because for many reasons, including opportunity, advancement up the social and income ladders, right? You would think that the big city is where a person makes it and is happy, or even like in popular culture, a person is born in the middle of nowhere, right? And then to do something, to be successful, you go to Buenos Aires, you go to São Paulo, you go to New York City, you go to London, and yet people are less happy there.
Well, that's an interesting point that you're making that could be interesting to explore in another study, is look at immigrants to the city. Because you assume that immigrants to Sao Paulo may not have family there, their family is in Northeast or whatever, so they feel more lonely, therefore they may be more unhappy, which connects with the previous presentation. So you look at if you are immigrant to Sao Paulo or you...
I have another paper on that, right? So there is a question oftentimes in surveys. There is one in Colombian administrative data, but I did it with the General Survey in the US. There was a question whether you were born in that place. Or there's also a question whether what was the size of a place you lived in when you were 16. So we do have papers on that earlier.
Migration patterns, if migration affects happiness.
Yes, a lot of people work in São Paulo and save some money to visit their families in each part of Brazil. So it's quite interesting. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Sure, and I'm not from Brazil. Rubia Valente is. I'm more familiar with Colombia, but.
Let me ask you, there is a state that you didn't show the data. I think so. The last image, the blank state.
Well, so blank is yellow. So it's middle category.
There's a white one there, and I guess
Is there?
that one is missing.
Oh yes. Apologies. Right. So this one here is white, and the data are missing. That's.
What state is that?
This is Goiás.
From the same creator, Adam. I am very good friend of Adam, but I am not able to pronounce your last name, Adam. Okay, just Adam. Adam has been working in the area of the what's going on in cities, what's going on happening in the urban-rural gradient, as he called it on his papers. And we have been doing work, as he showed, in Brazil. Now we are moving to Colombia. So pretty much all the background, the data, the methodology is pretty much there. So what I'm going to do in this analysis we did for Colombia, I'm going to fill in the gaps for whatever it is left from the conversation we already had. So I think we already touched base on this, but our main research question is what happened with the megacities, okay, and what happened with people who live in larger size concentrations of people. We know from the economic theory that cities provide better job opportunities, provide better services, and we have, as everything else in the academia, we have people who is pro living in the cities, people who is against it. So pretty much the pro-happiness urbana, they say the benefit, the economies of agglomeration, labor specialization, access to better health or education services, and there is a larger incomes. You usually tend to make a higher income when you are in a large city. In contrast to that, you have also the negative sides of living on large cities. You compare yourself in the way upwards with the wealth of many other people. there is congestion, stress, there is more prevalence of mental health issues in large cities. But the question is how large it has to be a city to create or those negative effects, or what is the size of the city in which I can live, in which I don't pay the penalties of living on a mega city. So there is some mixed evidence in the global evidence. We have in developed countries there is an urban penalty. People in general is less happy living in large cities. In developing countries we have mixed results because probably rural areas are very poor. So people derive better benefits of living in cities. And we don't have much evidence in Latin America until now. At least we have now two cities evaluated on this. So this is Colombia. Colombia has a huge inequality, regional inequality. You have regions which are very rich. It will look similar to a developed country. And you have other regions which are very poor, quite similar to indicators in Africa. So the country doesn't grow even in terms of economic distribution or in terms of access to public services. We have about 80% of urbanization, given the armed conflict which has been mostly located in the rural area. Many people has migrated to cities. And now we have one large city, which is Bogotá, 8 million inhabitants, and a bunch of small cities, about 1 million, 2 million. We have two cities, 2 million, and the others are 1 million and below, which we call intermediate cities. There is a high subjective well-being. When you go to the world values data, Colombia is very happy, not so happy when you see the World Happiness Report, which uses the country letter. And the information that the government gathers through DANE, which is the National Statistical Office, Colombians in general are pretty happy. Very similar to the tendency that we see in Latin America. So that's pretty much what we know. Data and methods, we go exactly with the same methodology that Adam just described, with the usual suspects, with the same distinction in terms of settlement size. Here is the table you were missing. Here is for Colombia. We have for population size, the number of responses that we have. In general, we have over 1,000 observations in total for this analysis. And we use a world value survey for 3 different waves. And this is an attempt to use IA to display results in a different way. So I'm not sure. I have the sense that there was a good attempt, but you will tell me now if we understand this. When we are comparing Bogotá, which is the mega city of Colombia with 8 million, and we compare with other cities, life satisfaction reduces. Okay, there is a penalty of living in Bogotá versus other places, and living in cities increases happiness for about 0.2 in the scale of 0 to 10, but reduces significantly when you go to large cities like Bogotá. One of the things that we found which is more interesting is the penalty in health, in self-reported health. When you go to Bogotá, people overall report lowest health, but when you go to other cities, which are smaller, about 1 million or so, health self-perception increases. So it might be, Mariano, you want to say something?
I don't understand Bogotá versus health. Is that you are comparing Bogotá with?
No, sorry. The title was the title is wrong. Here is self-reported health, and this is in general cities, not Bogotá. And this is self-reported health in Bogotá.
Bogotá versus smaller cities.
Yes, Bogotá versus smaller cities. Okay, and the penalty is larger for Bogotá. Okay, this is the main message that we got. And pretty much we are finding the same tendency that we are finding in other cities in Latin America, at least with the case of Brazil, that it is not living in cities, it's living in cities that are too big. Okay, it is more like a threshold. It is not necessarily the dimension of living in cities, because, for instance, cities in Colombia, in general, intermediate cities, they have better health services, better education, etc., etc. The people might benefit from living in cities, but it will be a matter of size. What happens when the city becomes too large to live in? Okay, so it is not black and white. It's like living in villages or rural areas, it will be better. So the limitations, the usual suspects with the limitation that we have, this is correlational. There is a self-selection of living in cities. People self-select of living in there, and probably with the hope that in cities they will find a better life. But our contribution is providing a more granularity to understand the differences between living in cities versus rural areas, and trying to find that nuances, that not all urban life has penalties for people. There might be something in the gray area. It might be something of size. In Colombia, for instance, one intermediate city has the best indicators in quality of life. It's a city or a little bit less than 1 million inhabitants. But as you go up, life satisfaction tends to go down. What are the implications? We have a mixed evidence regarding growth, size in cities versus life satisfaction. The inequality, the spatial inequality matters when we are in this realm. The megalopolis, or the megacities that we have in Latin America, which are very distinctive of the global south. In developed countries, we don't have that size of cities. They might need a different set of policies. Probably whatever is working or doing in the country might have a different angle for cities who are too large. In terms of exploring what are the mechanisms that mediate this relationship, it might be social comparison, it might be trust, the time that people uses transportation, and the fragmentation, the urban fragmentation. When you go to large cities, you can be two different cities, okay? And each one of those cities might be completely different than the last one. And our conclusion is Colombia in general is quite happy, but not Bogotá. And we wouldn't be able to say that from other intermediate cities in the country, at least based on this evidence. Thank you very much. And I don't know, Adam, if there is something else you want to add.
A quick question. This is very interesting, and my question, if you go to the health one.
Health.
Yeah, this is very intriguing, because you have access theoretically to the same services in a 1 million city versus bigger city. You have access to healthcare and so on. So I wonder if, and this is self-perception of health.
Yes.
I wonder if you can find objective data for health in those places and see if there is a higher instance of incidence of infant mortality rates or any type of diseases or any objective indicators of health that you can contrast with the self-perception of health.
Okay.
Is it possible to find some objective indicators of health too?
It is. It is possible to find it. And in general, objective indicators of health are better in cities. I mean, infant mortality or life expectancy, they might be higher in cities. But the self-reported of the perception information of health or access to health services, it might be quite different. I mean, people might have more access to health services in Bogotá, but the perception of the quality or the time waiting in line for being treated,
or they might have higher expectations,
or they might have higher expectations, for instance, or
yeah. But my question is, are they talking about their own health or the health?
No, their own health.
services in
No,
general,
their own
their
health.
own personal health.
Their personal health.
Nothing to do with the
With the
health
system,
services
no.
in the city.
And the health services will be better in cities, by far, in the objective data. But it doesn't capture the experience of people going to the health services, for instance, or how people perceive their health. Living in a polluted city, spending 3-4 hours a day in the transport system to get to a school, or the stress or the mental health issues.
Oh, mental health is another variable. Yeah, interesting. Yeah.
So, and it, unfortunately, is not captured here.
Lena, thanks for the presentation. Very interesting. I'm quite intrigued about this penalization that you show to us, because I'm in line with my colleagues say that actually in the life in cities it's a quite with more opportunity to health and so on. But I wonder if the people when they answer about health, they have in mind the possibility that the health that they could have if they live in another place, yeah, especially if the person is an immigrant, for example.
I am going to answer that question based on the experience that we have collecting other data, not the world value survey, okay? With my experience in Colombia, in Cali, which is the city in which Maria and I we live.
Cali, Medellin versus Bogotá.
No, I'm not here. I'm not.
Okay.
I'm going to do this slide for not confusing you, okay? So I'm going to just abstract myself from this work that we are just presenting. I am going to base this response based on the experience that we have collecting data. We have been collecting a population survey in Cali, which is called Calibrando. And we collect that survey every year. It's a statistical representative for gender, socioeconomic status, and race and ethnicity. We collect over 1,000 observations every year, okay? And it has been over 10 years in the process. When you ask people about health perception, I will say that people perceive their health, and I have to say something here. In general, people perceive their health very highly. Okay, most of the people say my health is good or is excellent. Okay, you get about 65% of the distribution in that category. People perceive that they don't have good health when they perceive pain. It's something in their body is painful. It's when they declare that the health is not good. And we know that because we ask another question about how many days in the last month have you been experiencing pain or physical illness in which you can work. Let's go to another indicator of health. We measure people in a scale. Okay, people go up in the scale and we can measure their weight, and we have the circumference of the waist. So we have pretty accurate information to measure obesity and overweight. And people who has obesity or overweight, 40% are pretty satisfied with their weight, okay? And second, they perceive their health as pretty good or excellent.
Gordito pero sano y contento.
Exactly. So there is not a direct association between health measures for the people who perceive their health. Okay? I could be obese, but my health is pretty good. Or I could have pretty good health, but it's painful in my body. I don't have a good health.
But doesn't explain the difference between small cities and big cities.
No. That's what I said. I am just subtracting this from this analysis.
No, we have a paper that was like 10 years ago using the Latino barometer. And some with the Inter-American Development Bank, some data. And we found out that it's not the same to be ill, which is a clinical condition, than to suffer from an illness, which is a human experience. And there is a gap there. So there are a lot of mediating factors And one of the most important factors was if there was somebody around or you are experiencing these illnesses alone, or there is family or friends, no?
Support network.
That support network is very important for how you suffer an illness. Not the clinical condition is there, but there is variability in how you suffer that. And that variability depends on support network. Even, and that's not our study, but there are studies from Netherlands about people in terminally ill. And you know that's when they tell you, look, your friend is terminally ill, 3 months, that kind of conversation, friends come back. Even kids come back. Sometimes you haven't seen kids for 2 years, they come back. That's instinct to visit people who are suffering for humans, no?
That's
and
opportunity.
that's also like kinds of relief, emotional relief. You cannot invert the condition. It's chronically ill, it's terminally ill, but you can make people suffer less. No? And then you have policies like in Costa Rica, where you allow people who have somebody, family, a relative with cancer, terminally ill, to have like 1 month paid salary to stay home. And that's good. It reduces productivity, but increases happiness. And you will not reverse the illness condition, but you will create a little bit of happiness there, at least for the person who is terminally ill. So that issue may be in big cities, small cities, and that connects with the other papers. And then I have another, it's a comment, no? Nigeria, Lagos, Nigeria, is projected to have 75 million people by the end of the century, no? And urbanization is everywhere, no? So one of the issues is how to design big cities, not to send everybody to the villages, no? But to design big cities that are more human, in that sense that we talk about, not the previous presentation. How do we design those cities? That may be that the space for policy making.
And
Not to say big
Well, urban
cities.
planners talk about a 20-minute city, that you need to be 20 minutes from all your amenities, supermarket, school, university, work. So if you can live in your 20-minute radius, then that can help.
20 minutes by walk.
by
20
walk.
minutes by walk,
20
it's a
minutes
20-minute
by walk,
city.
Yeah. The idea that you may have an agglomeration, but then you have communities, and your life takes place in that. How we design that, that would be the main issue, no? Actually, the Chinese are doing something very interesting, no, in urban design.
But you know, one of the things that I like the most of the research that I'm doing right now, because most of my research is concentrated on life satisfaction in cities. What happened to cities, and what are the information that is relevant for doing better policies at city life. We have been pretty much concentrated on countries, but national policies, you don't experience national policies every day. Your life is made on the everyday contact with whatever you are living. So a major has a larger impact on your life satisfaction and your subjective well-being than a president. Okay, so for me, cities represent the public infrastructure of our experience of subjective well-being in everyday life. So how it could inform? It could be informed through better housing, through the places that are built around neighborhoods, parks, churches, community centers, things like that that provide that cohesion for the people. It also informs in terms of better public transport or the interventions you do in public transport. If we see each other next year in the whatever is going to be the conference, I hope to be presenting one of the results of an intervention on subjective well-being we are going to start in the public system transportation of Cali. We are going to launch the program in 10 days or something like that. And it's going to be an intervention for kindness, for being optimistic, for being grateful with the other people. It's more intervention in terms of how we change the attitudes of people in the public transport.
So
okay?
if you translate these ideas to Medellin, Cali versus Bogotá, do you think that there are many differences in the way Cali and Medellin are operating versus Bogotá in terms of public transportation, parks, amenities? Anything that could explain your results?
Each city is
Cali, Medellin versus Bogotá.
Yes. Cali and Medellin are more comparable than Bogotá. Bogotá is a completely different animal, but in many ways, yes, it could be translated and it could be informed. Actually, Medellin, which is 2.4 million of inhabitants, Medellin has informed many of the policy interventions, not only in Colombia but in Latin America. So yes, it could be translated. So, but Mariano, I think that policy making for subjective well-being is more in the realm of what happens in cities more than what happens in countries. I think that countries
At the national level.
at the national level. It is what happens in my neighborhood, what is happened with the people where I share the spaces, the possibilities that I have to relate with my family who lives nearby. So
About your daily life.
my daily life.
How you spend your life.
But there are national policies. There are national policies that may influence happiness, like in Costa Rica or in Finland.
Oh, definitely.
There are some national policies that may explain some things.
Your proposal for an intervention, it's kind of in line about the intervention that positive psychology trying to run in some researches. But let me ask about something. The first thought that I forgot the question now. Sorry.
It will come.
About okay. About the penalty that you talking about, healthy and living in Bogotá. Actually, I was wondering if the living in the big cities is not favored to have to build a community well-being also. And how can how you think or figure it out the sense of community or community well-being and living in a bigger city, because since the people live in mega city, as you spoke, the people will try to find some friends or network or social network without family around or relatives. So the people start to build a social network. And this is very possible to do this in the big cities. These show up in your data, the people building some kind of network or community well-being and live in the big cities?
Well, we have been dealing for many years to be able to have some data at national level. Now, the information that we have at city level, to be able to have granular information on what is happening to people in daily lives, it's very scarce. The information you might have at country level. You might have data for Mexico, for Colombia, or for other countries. And not many countries collect that information. We are pretty much working with whatever Gallup is collecting, 1,000 observations per country, and that's the best data that we can have. Now thinking of information of cities, that's very, very rare. It's very scarce information. If national governments, some are somehow interested in subjective well-being, it's a completely different discussion at local level, especially because at city level, at least in the context of Colombia, any city that wants to have information of subjective well-being, they will have to collect themselves, okay? And that's very expensive. So we are a university, and in the center that I have the privilege to direct, which is a center of well-being studies, we collect that information every year, but that's pretty rare in the realm of subjective well-being. So we don't have that kind of information to compare cities. Some cities in Scandinavian countries.
We have time for a quick question?
Yes, well, I had two. One is methodological about your controls, but maybe we can discuss this later because maybe now we don't have time.
Social class.
Yeah, well, because maybe things about over-controlling, then maybe you can even have a higher effect, but maybe we can discuss this later. The other issue that I was thinking is about a new concept that is called the green apartheid, that especially in megacities, especially if you come from lower social backgrounds, people don't really have time to really experience or relate with nature, you know? That's why now, from a public policy perspective, they are trying to promote what is called the 300 rule for urban forestry, which means that individuals should see 3 trees from their dwelling, have 30% tree canopy in their neighborhood, and live within 300 meters of high-quality green space.
Oh my God.
It could be some of
Let's root for that. It will be hard to see it in the short run,
The
but
canopy index.
okay. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time and your attention.